Whoa, 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 whoa. Welcome back to the Robbie and Noah podcast here. On this podcast, we'll be talking about youth sports and the survey we sent out to students in our high school. First question we have was, have you played sports at a competitive level? This one was a pretty simple question. We had 133 say yes with only 2 saying no. This was just a good foundation to see because we wanted people that played at a competitive level.
Our second question was, has money been a factor of where you decided to play? This ended up being quite interesting because it was almost exactly the same. We had 51% of people answer yes and 49% of people answer no. So it's quite interesting to see that money can have such a large impact on this group of people.
That's a good point, Noah. It was a pretty split decision between this one, but I definitely agree with the side of yes, money has been a factor. It's definitely factored where I want to play in the future and present, and I can definitely agree with this one. Our third question was, do you think the level/team you play on would be different if money was not involved?
For this question, we had 3 answers: yes, no, and maybe. It was quite interesting to see that everyone was split pretty evenly once again. 41% of our survey said yes, it is a factor, or it has made a difference. 31% said no, and then 28% said maybe.
I think we can all agree that money is always a factor of where you're playing. You don't want to go to Winnipeg or Toronto and play there if you can play minor hockey here because it's cheaper. It's the same thing. In my experience here, if we wanted to play junior B, right now we play minor hockey, it costs about 3-4 grand to play in a year. You go play junior B and it costs 10 or 12 grand to play. Now I'm not paying, but my parents will, and they're going to have a say in that decision.
For our next question, we have, do you think spending more money gives you more opportunities?
In this question, we had 3 answers. Yes, no, sometimes. Yes, with the majority of 62% of people, sometimes with the second most with 35%, and no with the very low amount of 3%. Now I can 100% agree with this one. Yes is an outstanding, it's obvious. If you go and play, as I said in the last question, junior B, scouts are coming out to that game. You have people that are determining your future coming out to your games. If you play house, which is a lot cheaper than rep hockey, you're looking to pay 2 grand, there's no scouts coming out to that. 1, because of the league, and 2, just because there's less people that are coming out.
Our next question was, besides money, list other factors you think of when you're looking for a team to play on. Some examples are location, time, commitment, coaching staff, etc. Lots of people use those examples, and which is quite obvious too, because they're important things when you want to find out where you want to play at. So they're important factors of your decision. As many of these answers are obvious and quite common, there are also some that are quite interesting, such as this person stated that an unbiased and open-minded coach is something they are really interested in. This is a really interesting point because if you have an unbiased coach, you are able to be paid the amount you earn, and you can be rewarded for your efforts and not just sat on the bench because the coach likes this other player more than you.
Another aspect I found really interesting was someone said how the team has done in the past. Now I think this is a very fair observation because you want to look at the team, how they've done in the past and prior, and you want to know how that's going to determine your future.
Another interesting answer that we received was many people said they want to be on a team where they know people and they have friends on the team. This is quite interesting because when you know people and have connections, you'll probably have a better time, but there's 2 sides to this. Will it make you a better player because you might be distracted by your teammates, or will you be having more fun and feel a little more free on this team because you have some people you know?
Speaking on your point, Noah, another person said post-secondary opportunities. Now this one's definitely agreeable because it's what I'm thinking of for next year of hockey as well. I know I'm going into uni next year, but even being 1 year behind, it can still help me in my future trying to think of where I want to go. I don't want to play minor hockey next year because that won't help me in post-secondary. I want to play for a team, but that also comes with the question of how much money am I willing to spend, how far am I willing to go, and the time commitment, which were all very common answers we've seen in the past. Moving on to question 6, do you think you pay too much for sports right now? Interestingly, on this question, we actually had a split vote with 50-50. Money is always a factor when looking for sports. You're not going to pay 10 grand to go somewhere that you don't think will help you at all or develop you as a player. I think it's fair to have a 50-50 vote.
And next we have, how much money are you willing to pay in competitive sports? For this section, we had 4 different answers. $0 to $1,000, which ended up coming in with 24% of the vote. The next answer was $1,000 to $3,000, which had the majority of 45% of people willing to pay that amount of money. Our next option was $3,000 to $10,000, and we had 24% of the vote say this answer. And finally, we had $10,000 or more, with a 5% clicking this option.
I think depending on the sport you play also makes a huge difference in how much money you're willing to spend. If you're playing hockey, for example, $1,000 to $3,000 is what you will be paying, bare minimum. If you play soccer, on the other hand, $0 to $1,000 is probably all you'll be paying. Obviously, the higher up you go, the more people are coming to watch, the more fans you have, how the facilities are, the more money you're going to be paying. If you're there every day and you have a set schedule, you have a paid coach, you're going to be paying upwards of 10 grand. So I think it also matters on your skill, and where you're going to play is how much money you're going to spend.
I also think it depends on your values and what your goals and ambitions are in your sport. Are you really focused on improving and becoming the next great athlete or going up to a next level? Or are you just playing because you want to have fun and play at a competitive level?
Moving swiftly on to the next question. Have you ever felt that you missed out on an opportunity because of money or financial situation?
Our answers here were almost split between yes and no. 48% said yes, and 52% said no, which is quite interesting because personally I feel like there have been times where I haven't been able to have opportunities because I wasn't willing to pay $5,000 to go to a tournament where I could be seen.
I can definitely say that I've experienced this one before. Me and my buddies, when I was 15, we won a play-on tournament. The corporation asked us if we wanted to play in the elite tournament division to be seen by many others and be the best in the country. We couldn't because all they paid for was your flight, and being 15, we didn't have a lot of money, and paying for hotel and food was a big ask. I would have done it if the tournament covered the costs, but it didn't happen.
We can also take a look at some of the responses our survey gave us as well. Different answers, such as people having to play at level B instead of A because it was too expensive because of the amount of travel. That's a prime example of where you can play at that level, but they're missing out on opportunities because the travel was just too expensive and too much money to pay.
I'm reading here, if money was not an issue in sports, I may have gotten private coaching sessions or done more camps / building my skills. This one makes sense. If money wasn't an issue, everyone would be getting private coaching or private lessons. Another aspect of that, though, is time commitment. So time commitment and money could also be a factor in excelling in your skills.
Another important point that some of the answers have shown are that tryouts for these high-level teams are too expensive and out of their budget. This is a great point because you don't know if you want to take that risk paying that amount of money just to go out and try out and be cut from that team, because it would all feel like a waste of time and, most importantly, a waste of money.
On the other hand, there's also a lot of corporations that'll donate money to you to play in that level. Even if you're good enough, you might get a scholarship with private coaching lessons and everything included. I find here that I find ways to pay for it.
And there's also many people that just say it has not been a factor and they don't feel like they've missed out on any opportunities because there haven't been times when they haven't been able to afford these opportunities.
Another one I'm seeing here is a lot about tournaments. Something that isn't pretty common in sports are scouting tournaments, where you can go out far places where everyone goes to mingle, and a lot of scouts go to see your skills. These are usually pretty expensive camps that are really biased towards people that have a good, strong financial situation.
It's really interesting to see that lots of this really depends on your family financial situation, which is quite unfortunate because it's almost as if you were pricing good players out of competitive sports because they're unable to afford these opportunities. To build off of that last point, one response said that they had 4 older brothers who played competitive sports before them, which means lots of money was spent on them before this individual had the chance to play competitive sports, which ended up affecting the amount of opportunities they could have due to the money that was spent previously.
Moving on to the next question, swiftly but safely. Safe! Have sports become too serious in your opinion?
In this question, we had about 2/3 of the group say no, they have not become too serious, and about a third said yes, they have become too serious.
In my experience, sports have become too serious, but I feel like it's heavily weighted on how your family views them. If your family doesn't care too much about the sport you play or only cares that you're having fun and not that your team's winning, then I feel like sports are up to you. But if you have pressure from parents, coaches, friends, family, then it all really comes down to that.
We also got some answers from the individuals that said yes, it has become too serious. So some answers that were quite common are that coaches take it too far and their competitiveness is too much, even though it's a kid's sport and that kid has decided to play for their enjoyment. So I think that's quite interesting that it can really depend on your coach.
I feel this question is also orientated towards people that play higher level sports. If you play higher level sports, you have more pressure. You're given that pressure and expectation to win. That is your goal. If you play lower level sports, you're kind of playing for fun. Even if it's a factor of you not being good enough, you're not going to all have a common goal of wanting to win, and some people may be out there just to have fun. Another one I'm reading here is lots of pressure going to tournaments that college coaches could be scouting you at. Now, this kind of relates to the last point, but having scouts and people watching you, this is your future that this one play could be dependent on, and if that's not pressure, I don't know what pressure is.
And another interesting answer was that sometimes sports have become a time where the coaches aren't even really invested in the players. They're just invested in making money and being there for their own purpose. So sometimes they take it too seriously and don't understand the consequences that they have on these players.
Person number 21, named Anonymous. Instead of being able to be a multi-sport athlete, kids are specialized from a young age and told they can only play one sport competitively. I've experienced this 100%. I play soccer and hockey, but due to hockey being such a time commitment, I'm not able to play soccer to high levels I want to achieve. I feel like this is also a personal choice because I would rather play hockey over soccer, but they shouldn't even make you be choosing that at such a young age.
And finally, a final response that I thought was quite interesting and really made me think was that coaches sometimes take these sports too seriously at a really young age, which can really affect how one wants to play sports in the future and help them either continue on in this sport or decide to quit because they can't take the unrealistic expectations these coaches have at such a young age.
Waiting on to a plate plus a plate equals 135. Do you think sports academies have positive or negative effects on youth sports?
In this question, we had 74% say they have positive effects and 26% say they have negative effects, which is really interesting too because I find it depends on your perspectives and your experiences in life that could have great effects on this answer.
Going, gone! In the next question, Derek Carr, do you feel academies are more business or player development orientated?
With this question, we had 58% of people say it's more business oriented, and we had 42% say it's more player development, which I find it quite interesting because when it's more business oriented, that means it would probably have more negative effects on players. So I find it interesting that our results are a little bit wonky on these two questions. So in total, it's quite interesting to see that people think that they are more business oriented rather than development oriented.
We found a common answer saying that academies are a money grab. I'd have to disagree with that. I think academies are businesses. They have to support themselves. They have people that they're paying on a salary helping you develop as a player. If you're not serious about hockey or soccer, baseball, any other sports, academies are a lot more proficient in developing you as a player.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on some parts of that point, Robbie, because I feel that sure, some players are getting the full experience and the most out of their money, while some players are just taken to take their 10 or 20 grand a year and to come out and practice, and they say they are being developed, but they never get much time to play in the games. Another answer that is quite interesting is that someone said they feel it's more a pay-to-play system rather than being chosen on your skill. And this could also mean you're losing out on players trying out because they can't afford these opportunities, and rather than having a bunch of players come out that have lots of money in their family, so they're able to come out and try out and play on these teams. When if it was based all on skill, I don't think they would be able to play.
Now, at a young age that you'd have to pay for an academy, you're usually under the age of 20, which is also usually the time that you want to start developing your skills, and this is your moment to make the big shot wherever you want to go. Academies help provide this with scouting, and I think that's their biggest money grab that they have. There's no real evidence that supports that claim, but the academies definitely make sure that it's known that scouts are at their games and they're watching every game, and that can help you in your pursuit of going to the show.
Finally, I think this question really has two very polar opposite sides. There are the people that think that it's completely a scam and all based off of business and money, and that there are no real reason to be going because it's all taking your money. Or there's the side that thinks they're actually quite good for your benefit of being a player with lots of opportunities for development. So I think that's quite interesting to see.
Thanks for listening to the Robbie Tour and Noah Jete podcast. That's all for this one where we talked about student surveys. We'll see you in the next one.